2019 in the council chambers at 803 West Holland in the city of Alpine, Texas, for the purpose of considering the attached agenda. The notice is posted pursuant to Texas Open Meeting Act, Section 551.043, Texas Government Code. Public notice: the use of cellular phones are prohibited in the city council chambers during meetings of the city council. Members of the audience will be provided an opportunity to address during public hearings and during action items. Please speak into the microphone located at the podium and state your name and address. If you have a petition or other information pertaining to your subject, please present it to the city secretary. State law generally prohibits the council from discussing or taking any action on any issue not included on the agenda. But if appropriate, the council may schedule the topic for future discussion or refer the matter to staff. No personal attacks on council members or city staff will be allowed. The mayor may call a point of order to stop personal attacks. If an individual continues to personally attack an elected official or staff member in a meeting, they may be barred. Call this meeting to order. We'll have the invocation by Mayor Stan.
Virginia Nav, lay worship leader at St. James Episcopal Church. Dear Father, we welcome you into this city council meeting. Our offering to you is thanksgiving for the healing grace you continually rain down upon us, your children. Thank you for your Spirit poured out upon all flesh. Thank you for the work you offer to each of us to make this world the joyous and righteous place you intended to be. You, the Lord who guides the meek, shine your light upon our paths that we do not stumble. All praise to you who cares for us the best. Amen. And from the Book of Common Prayer, for local government, Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, send down upon those who hold office in this city the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve in their offices to promote the well-being of all people. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. And for Independence Day, Lord, God Almighty, in whose name the founders of this country won liberty for themselves and for us, and lit the torch of freedom for nations then unborn, grant that we and all the people of this land may have grace to maintain our liberties in righteousness and peace. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. Amen.
Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Thank you. City Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Mayor, we do have a quorum, and the notice was posted at 2 p.m. on June 28, 2019.
Thank you very much. We do have some recognitions today. Birthday wishes go out to Rio DeLuca, Lindy Montgomery, Scott Cosina, and John Galvan. Okay, I don't have a city mayor's report. City manager?
Nor do I. We do have city staff updates. First up is a quarterly report with the code enforcement by Code Compliance Officer Scott Cosina.
Good afternoon. Going over this quarter, had a total of 35 inspections, 21 were abated, 3 were non-issues, 11 remain unresolved. 3 junk vehicles, 12 high weeds, grass, 7 discarded items for illegal dumping, and 2 no permits. And that summarizes the quarter. On top of that, I included an updated list for grease trap interceptors, where I got all the information for every restaurant in the city and sent out notification that we need information regarding their quarterly maintenance. And they're working on that right now. The little company is a little backed up, so it's in the process and it's been working out so far. On top of that, we invested in some wireless camera systems to help monitor illegal dumping, and I hope that really helps the city out.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Scott, how do you handle the unresolved cases? You've got 11 of them here.
I come up there, I'll follow up with it, as a matter of fact, on, for example, third from the bottom, living in RV on the street has been resolved since this. So I just follow up.
Okay. Have you ever found a case where, and then if you can't get them working, you decide to write the citation, take it to court?
I have some that I need to do that with on typically unoccupied properties.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any more questions? Thank you very much, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll have the other report.
Mayor, next up we have the quarterly report for building and standards by building inspector Victor Menas.
Good afternoon. Okay, this is the third quarter report for the building services department. On permits, we had on the month of April, we have 55 permits. Consistent on everything, you know, mechanical, residential, commercial, demolition, all of them. On May, we had 31, and on June, we have 43. That's a total of 129 permits on this quarter. On the next page that we have, it's the description of all the permits and the fees. On the month of April, there were $14,515.40 charged for permits. On the month of May, there was $1,679.70, and on the month of June, $5,925.33 collected on permits. Inspections, there were done on the month of May, there were 52 inspections. On the month of June, 28. I'm missing him. Sorry. I apologize about that. On April, there were 45. Sorry. June, sorry, 45. Okay, on the revenue by quarter, as you can see here on 2017-2018, when I started on the third quarter was 10,524.48. Fourth quarter was 17,184. And then quarter first from 2018 to 2019, there was $22,660.38 collected on permits. The second quarter was 11,750 feet, 5.07, and the third quarter was $22,120.43. Basically, that's the report of the department. Have any questions?
Are these new construction, rebounding,
Everything, sir.
everything?
Yes, sir.
Accommodation.
Yeah, remodel, moving permits, new construction, that's even the permit for the Lechuguilla project. Okay, that was something, it's haven't started, but they already got the permit. They started moving some dirt. On the bus barn, they almost finished. They just passed the plumbing final inspection and the electrical. So, well, the electrical not yet. Okay, they're missing the electrical and the structural, so they can finalize that project. Any other questions?
Yeah, how much longer on that project do you have in mind?
On the bus barn, depending on the contractors, but you know, it's not, it won't take that much. I mean, probably by the end of this month, they'll have it ready.
Good deal.
Yes, sir.
A couple, so,
Yes, sir.
Victor, so there is no permit fee for fences, is that what you reported?
No,
Is
sir.
that correct?
There's no permit fees. If the code says that fence over, not over 7 feet, there's no permit for it.
Okay.
We're asking the citizens to go in there and apply for a permit. We're not charging it. We just tell them to bring the plot plan so we can tell them how high can it be on what side, where. In the front, they cannot be more than 4 feet. On the back, they can be 6 feet, 7 feet, that's it. But that's, we're trying to get them to do the work done correctly before they do it, and then we go there and say, it's not done correctly.
Yeah, because there was some controversy a couple of years back about that, on the height of the fences.
Yes, sir.
The back and the front. So people thought it had to be 4 foot all the way around. I'm glad you clarified that.
No, it's 4 foot on the front from the property, let's say your house, and then on the sides from there on, it's 4 feet from the front, and on the back from there on, it's 6 to 7 feet. If you're in the corner property, then you got 4 foot on that side too. Okay.
Next question, have you had a chance to read all the new legislation from this latest Texas legislative agenda that talks about the implications on what you can charge for fees?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the data came out, I issue a notice, an email to the people, the permit tech to charge only by square footage,
Yep.
not for fees, not for the total value.
Right.
Yes, sir. We're working on it. We're trying to get all the, the fees re-evaluated so we can see what we can charge for it. Okay.
How much longer before you think from a building inspection standpoint, you'll be ready to come back to council so we can have a review of that and take whatever action we need to relative to the fees?
Well, I have already a razor on it, just have to put it on a clean sheet of paper and see.
Do you think it's a couple months?
Yes, sir.
By the beginning of the fiscal year?
Even before that, probably. Okay.
Last question I have, what's the biggest issue you're running into now from a building inspection and codes perspective?
Right now, everything's running smooth. I mean, it's trying to, with all the contracts, when I started, it was, the tug of war. But thanks to the support from the city manager, backing of the decisions that the department did and everything, that helped a lot. And the contractors are knowing that they have to follow the rules, they have to follow the codes, and they're complying.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, we'll move on to public hearings. We have none. Consent agenda, minutes, financial reports, department written reports, board appointments. City manager.
Mayor, we've got approval of minutes from city council meeting on June 18, 2019, and approval of minutes from special city council meeting on June 25th, 2019.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Mayor, I move that we approve minutes for the city council meeting on June 18th through 2019 and approval of minutes for the special city council meeting on June 25th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made, second. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to information or discussion items, and we'll start with the city manager.
Mayor, first up, we have the quarterly report from the Visitor Center by Ellen Sheldon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The quarterly report, the first I'll do the second quarter report. This year we had 433 tourists through the Visitor Center in January. In February we had 1,213, and in March we had 1,142, which is a total of 2,788. Compared to last year, we are actually down 18 tourists from 2,806 to the 2,788. During this quarter, we had a pop-up visitor center at the big museum of the Big Bend for the Texas Cowboy Poetry Gathering, had a chance to visit and give out brochures to several hundred people. And everybody was very interested and very happy that we had the restaurant guide and things to do and see for when they weren't attending the Portrait Gathering. The visitor center restroom has also been renovated and remodeled, and now it is ADA compliant, and it looks very nice. Andrew and John did a very good job on doing that. Now, Mr. Stevens asked me to do a more recent thing, so I will give you the final numbers for the third quarter, which are 1,877 for this year, and they were at 1,795 for last year. And even as of today, we have already had 87 people through the visitor center in July.
Nice.
So,
Okay.
and with Viva Big Bend and 4th of July, we're already starting to get people in for 4th of July, and then Viva's just around the corner, and we'll have many heads in bed for this quarter also. So,
Very good, we need that.
and that's all I have.
Okay, any questions?
Thanks for pulling that together.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, next we've got a presentation from the United States Census Bureau by Roque Avon. He's outside.
Yeah. Good evening.
Good
Hi.
evening. How you doing?
I'm Roque Huggen from the United States Department of Commerce, U.S. Census Bureau. Thank you very much for having us here today. Howdy, folks. Fort Davis, Jeff Davis, Alpine, Marfa, the whole Big Bend area is a part of the El Paso Area Census Office. We cover 16 counties, from El Paso County, east to Midland and Ector, and south to Terrell and Brewster. This is not the first time that I've been to the Alpine area. We've been working with the county judge for the last couple of months at the beginning of the year, the COG level, the Rio Grande Council of Government level. Just recently started working with the mayor's office to brief them on the activities of the Census Bureau in the area and our intentions. And we wanted to come before you tonight and present to you a little background on the census and let you know what our plans and intentions are in this area and address any concerns or questions that you might have. I believe they're loading up the, yes, it's coming. Well, as you may know, I'll begin. Texas is a part of the 12-state Denver region for the census. We have field operations that are happening. Beginning in January, enumerators will be hitting the ground in certain parts of the country. Here in the El Paso area, we have hiring going on that we need help with. And we're really at the point where we are communicating, not with the general public yet, but with community leaders like yourselves, elected officials, to let you know what we are doing and why we are doing it, and creating that awareness and community education with the elected officials first and community leaders. So your Chamber of Commerce, your ISD, your health clinics, these individuals that help us reach out and create awareness. And we have a specific program called a Complete Count Committee that we use in order to do this. And we've had a couple of meetings here in this area. But let's begin with why we do the census. The census is mandated by the U.S. Constitution to be conducted every 10 years. Every resident, citizen or non-citizen, is to be counted. Since 1790, that's the way we've done it. For the first time ever, we will be doing the census online. We will be driving self-response. Between now and spring of next year, when self-response begins, we will be doing the community education portion at the local level here, and in the spring of next year at the national level. At this time, you may not see much about the census online or in media, maybe some social media about recruitment. If you do, I encourage you to follow us. We need your help. Folks want to see folks knocking on their doors that are from their town or their city. Right? It helps a lot. The timeline for the census is now, between now and the summer, the end of the summer, we are opening up our census office, which the entire operations for the actual count will happen beginning March 23rd, 2020. We call this self-response. Between March 23rd, 2020 and July 30, 2020, we have approximately 4 months to count close to 400 million people across the United States. And honestly, we need your help. And that's why I'm here. And that's why we've been working with the county judge and the mayor, and I've been meeting with myself, particularly meeting with community leaders here in the Alpine and Brewster area. We have commitments from Sul Ross University, the president, to help us. I've been down to Terlingua. The first time ever, I saw a wild turkey cross the road. Don't ask why. It was very impressive scenery. So, point is this, especially in these rural communities, the bottom line is the census comes down to knowledge, power, and money. Yes, we have a constitutional mandate to do it, but as government officials, municipal government employees, and department heads, we use this information for our planning, for our economic development purposes. Folks want to see a bigger McDonald's, or they want to see a Chick-fil-A. Well, Chick-fil-A wants to see certain population numbers. The planning, that's part of the knowledge that the census offers from doing our decennial census every 10 years, also coincides with power. It's about congressional redistricting. These numbers are used for the Electoral College on a national level for the congressional districts and how they're drawn across the United States, and also the state legislative districts that affect the races that are right here happening, down to the municipal level and even the ISDs. So these numbers are very real. The timetable also requires us to deliver the results of the census by end of 2020. They have to be on the desk of the White House of the President. By end of March 21, we are required by the U.S. Code to deliver results to the state legislative districts so they can use it for their redistricting. Knowledge, power, and money, that's why we do it. Over $600 billion in federal funding is tied to the census and the data. If you are at all familiar with managing a program that relies on state funds and federal funds, you know, thank you, Abel. Sorry. You know that these requirements for the grants and the programs require you to provide census numbers. Everything from Medicaid and Medicare to early childhood development, veterans money, highways, parks, all rely on census data to qualify for their funding. So we are making the count count. What I do want to show you here, if you could help me here, Abel, is that there's a link on this slide. If you just hit it, it's a nice, thank you, Miss City Manager. There's a link on this slide. We scroll down just a tad. There's a link there that should, there you go, hit that link. Got that audio video going. This is a part of our national campaign. You can see this on YouTube. Yeah, we need some audio there. There you go.
Yes, they can.
Can we
Because
restart
every
that?
2 years, the census gives us that power. You can shape
As loud as we can get it
by
there,
responding
Abel?
to the 2020
For that one, yes.
Can one girl in a small town,
Just
an
make sure.
architect in a major city, and a suburban high school coach shape the future of the United States? Yes, they can. Because every 2 years, the census gives us that power. You can shape your future. by
So this is a video part of our national campaign that really just starts to, this was launched on April 1, 2019, which was what we consider, April 1 is what we consider Census Day.
The 2020
So this is like the 1 year out of Census Day.
shape how
This was
billions of
launched.
dollars will be distributed to communities like yours each year. And in 2020, you can respond to the census online, by phone, or by mail. It's easy, safe, and important. Make sure you and everyone you know is counted. Now is the time for you to get involved. Your community needs you. Together, we can educate and excite, inspire, and make sure every voice is heard. Together, we can shape our future.
So Shape Your Future starts here. Shape your future for this community, for Alpine, Brewster County. This starts right here with getting the count out. For elected officials, it's just like getting the vote out. But for us, it's about getting the count out because every person matters. Everyone that relies on that funding for food stamps or health care, they matter. We have what we call in every given community hard to count populations. And this is the purpose of a complete count committee. We're working with the county judge to form a small group driven by him as the highest elected official, working with community leaders and elected officials at the city, the mayor, to form a committee of not just advocates, but thinkers and implementers of an outreach strategy to target communities that are traditionally undercounted. So elderly, veterans, homeless, single parents, students, period, 18 to 24, disabled, the minorities, the immigrants in our communities. We need them counted. And we need your help to do it. So that's what we talk about, making the count count. I already explained to you, if you can, we've already talked about Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution. Apportionment, I've touched on about how the census affects representation in Congress. This right here is an important slide. You see 2010, from the 2010 official results, Texas gained 4 seats. And you also see communities that do not get the count out, they lose representation. And that matters a lot. Next slide, please. We can skip through this. I already touched on the timeline. You see that star where we're at in terms of opening the census office and our timeline and ways to respond. The rural communities like here in Alpine, we have at the census on the field operational level, you see here Community Partnership and Engagement Program, we're the front end of the field ops that are actually going to do the count. So we're building the relationships, getting to know everybody, getting to know where are the pockets of folks that don't want to be touched, don't want to be bothered, will shoot you if you step on their land. We want to know where they are. We need to. We respect their privacy. Confidentiality is important. Confidentiality when it comes to the Census Bureau and the actual census. As employees of the Bureau, we are sworn to secrecy the minute we're hired. If we are to divulge personal information that's gathered during the census, we are not just fined, but we are jailed. As a Bureau, I am here on behalf of the United States federal government to assure you that we have not, do not, and will not cooperate with law enforcement and share this data that is collected. Whatever data you submit online or through a questionnaire over the phone is 100% confidential. So we have different strategies we use to build the outreach initiatives in the community, as we mentioned here, the Complete Count committees, working with higher ed, immigrant services, for example, in El Paso. We're working with the Border Network Human Rights, faith-based organizations that are not just in El Paso, but in the Big Bend area. You'll start hearing more and more about it, but we want you to know about it so that you're not surprised. And we need your support. If you can continue to the next slide. So the Complete Count Committee is essentially, as I mentioned, we have, it's a not a rigorous, but it's a robust program, if you will. One of the most effective tools the Bureau has for grassroots outreach strategies and developing them and implementing them and getting out the count. So you have a concentration of elected officials and city leaders, community leaders, surrounded by individuals who specialize with their organizations in serving these hard-to-count communities, like veterans, like early childhood, like K through 12, right? Like elderly, like early childhood, like single parents, like the immigrants. So the idea is to put together this committee, brainstorm, come up with a plan of action over the next year, implement it, and deliver the count. Next slide. We are, if you go to 2020census.gov, you can sign up for email subscriptions, find out more about the census, what we're doing. You can look up your city, your town, your tract. You can see the socioeconomics, the characteristics about your community on the county level, on the city level. Very interesting. Now you go to the next slide, please. We're on social media. Next slide. You can sign up for email subscriptions. Social media, we encourage you to follow us, share us. Right now the messages are about recruiting. We need help recruiting. We have positions available, whether they're clerks in the office or they are enumerators knocking on doors. Some are part-time, some are full-time. We encourage you to help us share this information and provide opportunities. Please continue. For those involved in education, we have not curriculum, but activities that are census-based, about census, K through 12, interdisciplinary. We encourage you to visit our website so you can see more about it. Again, we need help recruiting. Please, next slide. That's a slide of the Border Network Human Rights. They're very active partners in El Paso. El Paso is the most advanced CCC we have. The city and county came together, committed close to $200,000 already. A joint Complete Count committee of committee leaders, philanthropic organizations helping them raise funds, the city committing funds, the county matching those funds to hire a PR firm to help them do the branding for the count. That happens in bigger municipalities, not expected in smaller ones, but that's up to the leadership group of the Complete Count Committee. Right now, their goal is about $1 million. I work specifically with Midland, City of Midland and County of Midland, also the Permian Basin area, Ector County and Odessa. They targeted $100,000 as joint CCCs, meaning 40 grand from the city, 40 from the county. They're a little bigger, obviously a lot bigger than this area, right, our area here. And then another 20K from philanthropic organizations. How that's financed, how those costs for the actual campaign are shared, that's a deliberative process that's up to the leadership. And of course, this body. Go on, next slide. Yeah. Oh yeah, yes. Oh well, the audio's not that great. I would encourage you to visit YouTube, 2020census.gov. You'll see all these videos there. Next slide there. No, that's okay. The audio's not. So we're asking you to help us take a leadership role, continue to be a leader in your community, help us identify trusted voices. And that's really a key part of those community leaders that are helping. Because we come into a group of immigrants or veterans, or we come in red, white, and blue, and we're from the federal government. Literally, the narrative in the community is the census knocks on the front door, you better run out the back. That's up and down the board. We need friends like yourself, community leaders to help us re-encourage the community that it's safe to fill out this census. Period. Again, we're hiring 2020census.gov/jobs. And at that, I will rest and open myself up to any questions. Thank you for your time, patience, and attention to me.
If someone doesn't fill out the census in its entirety, what happens?
That is considered an incomplete census form, and it still counts, but what will happen is there is a greater likelihood that that household will receive a call, follow-up, or a visit. Because what will happen is, you have the self-response date between March and July. Now halfway through, right, because it's the first time they're using technology to keep track of addresses, and who's responding and who's not, to monitor participation rates. We've never been able to do it before the way we're going to do it this time. Just with apps and iPads and phones and everything that's available. So when you see an area not responding, the field operations managers in El Paso, they'll send out a team, they'll deploy a team to go knock on those doors. Now, it's a little different in the rural areas. Because normally when we think of census, you think somebody's knocking on your door, but that's a household, a residence, that receives mail at that address. That's right. So that's the traditional way we do that operation. In rural areas where there's a great amount of PO boxes, it's an operation called up, down, update, leave. So we will literally hire folks from the community to walk around with a packet. Because we do not, the Census Bureau does not send questionnaires to PO boxes. Only physical addresses. So they will literally have a packet. And that packet will be a questionnaire, a flyer telling you what website to go to, instructions, phone number, and that packet will be left on that physical address. And that's where this local knowledge and local wisdom comes in. Because yes, we're working with the 911 districts, with the COG, and yes, we've been working with the City and County Bureau of Planning to identify addresses and update those addresses between the last census and this census. But at the same time, y'all know your community better than anyone. So y'all be able to tell us what that trailer there's 3, 4 families or whatever. Right? Again, we're not a regulatory agency. We're not going to go in there and pull nobody out or turn around and give it information or tell the landlord or anything. We just want to know the name of the person and the relationship of the individuals living in that household to that individual. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Sir?
You're working really hard, and I applaud your effort for trying to get the count up and get everyone included.
Yes, sir. Thank
How do you manage the flip side where people might say, well, I'll go on the census at this address and at this address and this address? What's the process that you use to kind of make sure there's not an overabundance of people trying to get their information in? Because, as you said, it's all about money, it's all about power, it's all about resources.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Alderman. Internally, for the field operations, as they're processing, there is a check for duplicates. So through the address, they have a system within the actual counting and as it's processed to make sure that those duplicates are not overlooked. That's how it's been explained.
So is it name-based or address-based? So if I have,
Address-based.
so if there's 2 addresses, someone puts a name in this address and puts a name in this address, then they could be, in theory, double counted.
They'll cross-reference that with tax documents and other things.
Okay, so that's the other part of it.
There's a secondary source of resources that will check that.
So you'll be hiring folks who actually go down to the physical locations, and what will you be paying these individuals?
Minimum 15, 53 an hour. I'll get back to that. I know it's more than 15. I know it's more than 15.
I might even take that down.
And part-time, it's great for retirees, it's great for students, it's great, no extra. Plus, it's a civic duty. It'd be nice to have that.
Well, very good. And I hope that we do have a successful census. I know it's crucial, but especially for the rural communities that are always short in funds and whatnot. I think the more we can get in there, the better, because they get better resources in return. Just filling out the paperwork and whatnot. I know there was a section in there they're trying to implement about citizenship that failed. Can you explain about whether you're a U.S. citizen or not and you fill out the census? You haven't had the answer to that?
Yeah, well, as you know, as you may know, the Supreme Court ruled that the question is not to be included. Right? In terms of the Bureau and what we are doing, we are prepared, we have been prepared, and we are moving forward with the county. Right? So the politics of it, that's beyond my pay grade. Right? But at the same time, you know, our mission is to deliver that count, whether a citizen or not citizen. There are community organizations that believe that that damage and fear has been created and done, and it's already going to be difficult. One of them, again, I've been around the 16 county area myself personally, working with mayors, community leaders, county judges, folks. You know, so at the end of the day, the message is we need to get the count out. That's all the more reason to get the count out, to alleviate those fears, to help people feel comfortable in filling out that information. We've been testing it, especially with the online version, right? Because you have a real issue with the digital divide. Not everybody has the internet, and everybody wants the internet. You know, you're going to have 4 months to respond online. So over the last 10 years, since the last census, the IT department, they've been working on making sure that your identity is not going to get stolen, your information is protected. So all those kinks have been worked out. So I've been assured that it's safe.
I think, you know, you did clarify that because there's a lot of folks that have moved out this area just to get away from the big city and whatnot. They just want to isolate themselves. So I'm glad that you're bringing this up, that you're assuring people that information is private and will be kept that way. So,
well, as you know, Mayor, from our conversations, it's really going to be y'all that convey that message, right? Because it's not just the messenger, it's the messenger, it's the message too, and the media, right? So when it comes from you, when it comes from this body, when it comes from the members of the folks that are in this room, it helps a lot. And when people, whether they live down the street or out in the middle of the mountains, when they know that it's okay.
it's a person they can trust and know, and they feel comfortable.
And that's the point of the Complete Count Committee.
Right.
Right. To identify those challenges, come up with those strategies, and implement them.
Any questions?
Yes. You mentioned that we should make an effort, or the census should make an effort to count the new people that are coming from Central America. Would this be only, I'm assuming detention centers would be the start. But what is the political implication for communities that are now housing or holding immigrants? Does that mean if you have a high level of immigrants in the community, that it's likely that those folks or those communities will receive a higher level of funds? Or
Again, political implications are beyond my pay grade. What in terms of looking into the future, reading those tea leaves, right? But what I can share with you is that the way detention centers are counted is a different operation that we call group quarters. So we work with different entities that have residences that are all together, like detention centers, privately funded and managed, and publicly funded and managed, a little different. So we identify those detention centers, and that's why it's important to have this Complete Count Committee and have you all involved with it, because you're bringing up good questions. Right, so what I'm going to do is, as a liaison, I'm here to extract that knowledge and those issues, right, and say, okay, filled out team in El Paso, we got Sierra Blanca, but we got this holding center for Customs and Border Patrol here, right? How do we count them? That's in the weeds, if you will. But it's a good question. I'll look into that further.
Any questions? Yes.
I have a suggestion that you encourage people to be counted so we can get an HEB down here.
HEB, a Bill Miller's, a Chick-fil-A, Buc-ee's.
Whataburger.
Any more questions?
But you know, that's exactly right. Thank you.
Thank you, Roque. Very informative. We appreciate it. And we'll be working with you. Yes, Mr. Goldman.
Is there going to be a difference in designation, racial designation between Caucasian and white?
In which regard, sir?
Is there going to be, in the questionnaire, going to be a differentiation between Caucasian and white races?
Race question on the questionnaire, that's it? That's it? That's what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What is the difference between Caucasian and white?
Caucasian, then if you go online and you look at the form, you can see the definition of Caucasian and where they trace those roots to, right? And then there's a racial question, an ethnic question, different from racial question. Those explanations are there. I would encourage you to go to the website. I don't want to get too far into identity politics right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate you, City
Great
Manager.
presentation.
Thank you so much.
So you have, they're looking for help, $15 plus an hour. Okay, let's go to item C.
Mayor, next we have the Center for Big Bend Studies, Sam Kaysen, Cultural Resources Management Coordinator, to present on services available under the Antiquities Code.
Hello, thank you for affording us a little bit of time. I regret that it was my name primarily on the schedule because my colleague is here, and we have a short kind of informational presentation for you guys regarding cultural resources in our city. So my name is Sam Kaysen, and I am with the Center for Big Bend Studies. And that is an organization, kind of a department out of Sul Ross University. We're a research-based organization, but we also provide other services to the city and other land managing agencies. I'm going to give you guys some supplemental material, but I don't need for you to get into the weeds. You can mainly just listen to me talk, but I do have this. It has some details and some direction to other resources to help you understand things. And you could pass that down. So I'm here to kind of highlight the responsibility that the city has to take cultural resources into consideration during planning and community development here in Alpine. So I trust that some of you guys will find this familiar terrain, but in the event that you don't find it familiar, that's very helpful for us, but it helps to kind of articulate these things, and particularly how the CBBS, the Center for Big Bend Studies, can help some of the city objectives. Like I said, what I'm here to address is our cultural resources. And so what is a cultural resource? That is defined variously as districts, sites, buildings, structures, documents, and objects that include historic and prehistoric archaeological materials. So we're talking about cultural resources that pertain to our local and national heritage, mostly physical remains like buildings and artifacts and documents and things of that nature. So some of the legislative drivers that I'm going to discuss talk about cultural resources as historic properties. But I need for you to understand that when I say historic properties, that those include prehistoric materials as well, because that's also a part of our national heritage. And so in general, these cultural resources apply to things that are roughly 50 years old or more, and that may go back as early as 12,000 years ago in our neck of the woods. So an example of some of these things that I'm talking about, cultural resources, are things like documents, old buildings, old roads and trails, infrastructure, and assemblages of artifacts. So these are largely materials that might be mistakenly characterized as ruins or garbage, but is actually part of our local heritage. So these cultural resources often occur as deposits and archaeological sites. And these are properties that are collections of materials such as accumulation of debris, artifacts, foundations, wells, the remains of old privies and cooking hearths and activity areas, what professionals call sites. So these are locations of habitation and economic activities, historic events, prehistoric occupations, and a range of other remains of cultural residue, as it were. Historic properties are mostly evaluated according to the role that they have played in important historic patterns, and in terms of the scientific value that we can learn from these historic remains. Some sites and cultural resources warrant a higher degree of protection than others, and that's important for planning. So another important concept that I need for you guys to have on your radar is this idea of cultural resources management, what we call CRM. This is the industry and role of navigating the laws and regulations and procedures around cultural resources. So we as CRM professionals facilitate compliance, and that is doing what the various laws require an agency to do to manage its impacts on the cultural environment. So the Center for Big Bend Studies at SOROS is in the business of cultural resource management in conjunction with our historical and archaeological research that we do right here in everybody's backyard. So really what sets the precedent for why I'm here today is a set of legislative drivers and regulations. So the political subdivisions of the state, such as cities and counties and districts, have a legal and a civic obligation to consider cultural resources in planning and implementation of projects, specifically those projects that involve construction, earth moving activities, renovation, demolition, and all of this, it is stipulated in the legislation, is to be carried out in consultation with regulatory agencies. So the most important federal legislative drivers is probably the National Environmental Protection Act. This is an umbrella legislative body that it imports federal agencies to take into account impacts on our environment, National Environmental Protection Act. Our environment also includes our cultural environment, so cultural resources fall under NEPA, National Environmental Protection Act. I know. So some of the NEPA processes that y'all might be familiar with are things like environmental assessments and environmental impact statements. So NEPA kind of sets the national precedent for the value of cultural resources. So more acutely important for planning purposes for the city and for the county is the National Historic Preservation Act, specifically Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. This, on a project basis, states that federal agencies must take into account the impacts of their actions on historic properties through studies and consultation with regulatory agencies. So I'm trying to plug that important part is the consultation bit. The most important kind of regulatory agency that you consult with is the State Historic Preservation Offices, Historic Preservation Office. And you guys would know that our Historic Preservation Office is the Texas Historical Commission, the THC. And so they play a pivotal role in the federal legislation and state legislation concerning cultural resources. Consultation, keep saying that. So projects on federal land or that use federal monies, like grants, and I know that we in the city use federal monies to get projects underway. So on federal land with federal monies or that are regulated by federal agencies, such as the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission or the USDA. Some of these community development grants that come from the USDA that the city uses, that triggers this National Historic Preservation Act Section 106 review and the need for consultation about cultural resources. So other important federal legislation include such things as the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, as well as the Archaeological Resources Protection Act. And these are legislative measures that stipulate that it's unlawful to vandalize, disturb, or traffic in cultural resources in specific circumstances. That is relevant to us. You know, I'm talking about federal legislation, but there is an element of that that is important in our planning purposes here. So probably more acutely what you guys are going to deal with on a regular basis is state legislative drivers, such as the Antiquities Code of Texas. And so that is the document that I've provided you guys in that handout. I hope that some of you are familiar with that. It's a necessary reference for a while when you are reviewing upcoming projects that might involve construction, demolition, renovation, or earth-moving disturbances. So the Antiquities Code is a law that's designed to guide the inventory, study, and protection of historic properties in the state of Texas. So the Texas Historic Commission, the THC, they are responsible for the oversight of the Antiquities Code. The code stipulates that in the process of these city, county, district projects, that we, the city, needs to notify, that is, consult with the Texas Historical Commission to ensure proper consideration of cultural resources. So that, of course, is specific to projects that are on state, county land, but it also involves projects that are using city money or county money. That when those conditions are in play, that consultation with the THC is a necessary thing. So the Historic Commission may recommend, based on your consultation with them, the inventory, study, or mitigation of cultural resources like archaeological sites, like architectural features, like old buildings. They will make recommendations as to what needs to happen. It may be, given certain conditions, that they may recommend that nothing needs to happen. And so if you're not familiar with this process, I need to kind of iterate that consulting with the Historic Commission is not automatically going to necessitate halting your project and incredible expense, but it depends on the conditions. So cultural properties, when they are encountered, are assessed according to criteria as to whether they might be included as state archaeological landmarks. Properties that are listed as eligible as archaeological landmarks are afforded extra measures of protection during planning and implementation of projects for the city. So this process of consultation with the THC, it's called notification, and it's outlined in a section of the Antiquities Code. And so I would encourage you guys to be familiar with that, because there are exceptions and there are exemptions to that. So as you're going through a planning process, there are parameters about how large an area a project might impact that might kind of untrigger consultation with the THC. So the details in the code are important to pay attention to. So really, I'd like to get to this briefly, to this question of why do we need to consider cultural resources in our planning and community development. So as I just outlined, there are laws and regulations that require it. So neglecting to account for cultural resources in planning can result in fines, it can result in litigation, and it can cost you lengthy delays in the goals and objectives that you're working towards. So these cultural resources are critical aspects of the community that we live in and that we serve, the community that we serve. And so they reflect our heritage, our identities, and the way that people define themselves in their day-to-day life. Those are values that are recognized in federal and state legislation. So you can see the emphasis there. Cultural resources mean different things to different folks, and we have a lot of diverse, just as we have a diverse community, diverse individuals, there's also a lot of different kinds of value systems that are placed on cultural resources. And so as we're making planning decisions about how to move things around, what to build, it's important to realize that just because, for instance, a building doesn't seem to have economic value anymore, it may actually still have intrinsic and cultural value to people in the community. So the weighing of different value systems is very important in this process. Conservation and preservation are increasingly becoming an expectation in city planning and are considered best practice to consider cultural resources. And I think it's important to be on the right side of history on that bit. And lastly, these cultural resources are part of the economic base of the city. I mean, people come here to Alpine not only to experience the grandeur of the landscape, but they also come here for a cultural experience. And so historic preservation, cultural resource management, these things are valuable to the community, and they can be capitalized on to increase visitation and increase revenue for the city. And this is encompassed in the whole idea of heritage tourism, which we are the recipient of. This is a part of our economic base, and it's in our best interest to take care of that. So I've left you guys with some supplementary material. I want to just provide just a brief amount of time for my colleague, David Keller, to add a little bit of detail to what I've addressed with cultural resources. So David, would you mind? I would appreciate that.
Thanks, Sam. My name is David Keller. I also work at the Center for Big Bend Studies. I'm a colleague of Sam's. And so I'm here partially on that behalf, in that role, but more so as a citizen of Alpine and as an advocate for historic preservation, which I've been for many years. And I thought this was a good opportunity to kind of slip this in there. In 2010, I wrote this book about Alpine. Some of you may have seen it. And I did that for a very specific reason. It wasn't for the money. It was not for recognition or anything like that. It was because I felt that Alpine had a very distinguished history, and that most people living in Alpine, including the people who were administering the town, didn't really have a good sense of it. And without that sense of history, it's very hard to know how to guide, where to go, how to direct actions so that they're consonant with the history of the place. Alpine's history is really distinguished and is really unique. And the reason for that, the main reason for that, is about place. It's about where we're located. The other reason for that is because the college on the hill. It really made a difference. In 1920, when Sul-Ross opened its doors, Alpine grew just a little bigger. I mean, it held its head significantly higher. And it's distinguished the town ever since. And it's an important aspect of our history. So, when this book came out in 2010, I felt like one more thing needed to happen, and it was just to kind of connect the dots a little bit. And so I did write an article in Siniso in 2011 about Alpine and the idea of sense of place, which is basically this idea of owning your history, owning your place in the environment. I really believe that understanding local history is critical to developing a sense of place, and that there's a lot at stake when we don't do that. We've lost a lot. Alpine's lost a lot of its history, of its historic structures. Probably the most egregious loss we had, many of you weren't even here, probably maybe not even alive then. But it was the old Central School in Alpine, a beautiful school that many people don't even realize that building, that institution inspired Sul-Ross. And we destroyed that. And I am here to say that we cannot continue to do those things. We've got to honor our past. We've got to honor our built environment. It's very critical. Because without tangible reminders of our history, we have no physical context. As places lose their character, they devolve. They become a mockery of living space. Go to any small town in Texas, most any small town, and you can see what I'm talking about. Go to Midland, go to Odessa, go to Lubbock. Alpine is not like that. We have something special, we have something different, and we've really got to rally around that and recognize that. And so, basically, I'm here to encourage developing a culture of preservation, not a bunch of regulations, but to have a sense of pride and a sense of identity, so that it guides the decisions that we make as we move forward collectively, to do the right thing, to not lose historic structures, to pay more attention to some of these old adobes on the south side. That is a treasure that we have. The Texas Historical Commission determined more than a decade ago that Alpine's South Side District has the highest density collection of historic adobes in the state outside of El Paso. That is a true resource. And so whenever I hear of adobes being demolished, it freaks me out. I mean, not only because I live over there in one of these old houses and I treasure it, but because I sense the gravity of it. So, what was it, a year, 2 years ago, the city demolished Pete Gallego's house, the house that he was raised in. That is unconscionable. We cannot do that. We just can't. So I really encourage us to think along those lines. Wendell Berry once said, a poet, once said, if you don't know where you are, you don't know who you are. I think we nourish what is good about place, we nourish ourselves. We retain a sense of place, a sense of history, and our place in the world. So with that, I'll leave you. Thank you very much.
I got a question for you, David. Great presentation. It's like two different buildings I was raised in.
Yes.
There's one on the south side that I brought to Sam's attention. There used to be a little store on Murphy Street by the creek.
Yes.
That, I believe, is scheduled for demolition.
Yes.
Okay. If it falls under the Antiquities Code, then what happens to that building because it's a health hazard?
This is where those things come to conflict, and it is an issue. And you guys are charged with providing a safe community. And I understand that, I respect that, it's necessary. That's a great question. That house absolutely qualifies. It's a historic house. Anything that's basically anything that's more than, this will freak you out, anything that's more than about 50 years old is considered to have the potential for historic integrity. So many of us are approaching that house, or there, or past it. So we're historic artifacts.
I understand the role of the Texas Historical Commission at the state level, having the oversight for the ticketed code, but we should not forget that at the county level, there is also a county historical commission, which basically works, represents the state commission at the state level. And the county commission also works very closely with other entities, societies that deal with historical preservation and interpretation. And at the county level, they're doing a pretty good.
Yeah, they are. And I commend them. They've done a fabulous job. It's an active commission. Travis Roberts, who heads it up, has been awarded, I think, awards every year for years and years because of his commitment. And so they're really outstanding. And it is a great resource, one that we need to tap into. So with regard to this Adobe, I don't know the answer, but I'll look into it. And I think that kind of keys back to what Sam was talking about, that the center, we want you to see us as a resource. We're here to help. We're here to interpret those codes and to try to facilitate an exchange so that we can all, get on the same page.
To that point, we're vested with responsibility for the safety of the city.
Yes.
Clearly understand what you're trying to do from a historical standpoint. My suggestion would be you go work with property owners, fence it, make it safe, and then take actions. That resolves our issue as a city council about vagrants who move in there, live in there, make it unsafe, burn things down. But I think that's the initiative you all can take to go work with the property owners. When that happens, our issue is resolved. Without that action, we are forced to take action for safety. That make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. But there's always options.
That's what I say, but you all are going to have to take the lead on that
Yes.
because as a council now, we're stuck with a position about how to go work that.
Well, I think an important part of that is that consultation process with the Historic Commission.
Yeah.
Is that I think that the city, in implementing those plans, is obligated to go to the THC to broach those topics.
I don't think there's any question, but someone's going to have to pay for fences. That's not our property. We're about safety of the citizens. So if you all can help work that behind the scenes, that will make it a lot easier for us on council to be able to come for consultation. Where we will struggle is if we come forward and you say, well, I'm sorry, that's a Adobe building, cannot be torn down. You've not resolved the safety issue, which is where we have an obligation.
And that particular building, you had homeless living in there that trashed out, put the fire in it, and it has become a hazard.
Yeah.
And now it's boarded up, but yes, like Councilman Stevens said, the property owner would take the initiative to build a fence that could be fenced off, and hopes later in time, monies could be made available through donations or whatnot to restore that building, because it is a nice little building, and just reminiscent of yesteryears that it was a store and it served the community.
Absolutely.
I think it's going to be a collaborative effort to get that, property fenced off or made safe for the public.
It is.
We do have a responsibility to the public. Kids, how kids are, we were all kids, going into the building collapses on it.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, good concerns. But these are the conversations that we need to have, so I do appreciate that.
And, we've already met with Sam, and, I don't have a problem even with the rest of the commission, see perhaps, or even more of the council, to see what we can do about preserving our heritage. I was in South with 3 weeks ago, and previously restored little town, all Adobe.
Yes.
I was very impressed. I went back the second day to take a private tour by myself, just to explore the area. But, we need more of that. That's a great tourist attraction also.
Yeah, it really is.
To that point, if you all show up to the Building Standards Commission, that would be very helpful. Building Standards Commission is vested, they have a judicial responsibility to maintain safety. They're the ones that take the rulings on that. And if you show up to meetings, now close the gap and you can help them out.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, so find the agenda. Victor can probably help you out with that.
Yeah, good deal. Thank you.
You got a question back here? Yes, sir. David Keller, I had a question. As far as going back to the area of the Trans-Pecos pipeline, wasn't there a violation there of the Integrity Code or Native American sites? We should clarify that.
That's, I'm gonna have to rule that out of order, sir.
Out of order?
Yes, sir, because it's not information
It's
item.
historical.
But
Antiquities
that,
code
you can
is
get
what-
together with him after the meeting, or step outside and discuss it. Yes, sir. I'm not trying to shut you down, but just that we have the rules we have to abide by. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item D, city manager.
Mayor, next we have recent and ongoing issues with water and wastewater system. Not sure where to start. Johnny is our lead. Speaking of problems with water systems. In your packet, I included the project information forms that were submitted back in February to the Water Development Board. We're estimating that at the wastewater treatment plant, we're going to need about $2.2 million to bring that up to minimal standards, as well as into compliance with our TCEQ permit. And on the water side, $5.2 million, almost $5.3 million to do the same there. I know we've had some recent issues. We completed the third phase of the implementation of our SCADA system, which is the technology that allows the departments to observe and maintain what is going on at the wells and the tanks and the booster stations. And really glad Steve is here. Steve made it.
If you'd like, I could give you a little presentation on what the SCADA system does.
Yeah, if you all want, he can tell you a little bit about that technology.
Yes, please, because, you know, we've had some issues with this gate, and I think the members of our city need to know about it, how it works, and
Yeah.
So Steve is with Control Networks Plus. Control Networks Plus is the company that was contracted with by the city 2 years ago.
Maybe 3.
Maybe 3
I've been here
years.
quite a few times.
3 years ago?
I don't remember exactly. Oh, yeah, I have it. So basically, this is an overview of your system that you have in place now. The SCADA system we're implementing here is Ignition. Is designed by Industrial Automation. It's state of the art. It's probably the best package out there in my opinion. We don't rep Ignition. We're just a SCADA company. So basically, you have an overview, and your operators have an overview. They actually have it on their phones. If anything goes down, they receive an alarm via text. Whoever's on call gets that alarm and can respond. You can see your wells, and in particular, you can see that Muske's 10 there is not up and operational. They're working on the well. The system is down there. Muske's 7 was down recently. But basically, this shows them the state of all their wells, whether it's running in the amperage, the runtime hours, basically any historical data we can gather. Same thing with your Sunday Glen area wells. As you can see, we've got 4 of them running right now. Tank levels look pretty good. They're able to monitor their storage at the different tank sites, booster pump stations, monitor which booster pumps are going on. Basically, anything out there that we can monitor, we're monitoring. A lot of SCADA systems are tag-based, to where you pay an X dollar for a certain amount of tags. This SCADA system happens to be unlimited, so it allows the city to grow to whatever level they want. There's no limit on the database that's in there. The only limiting factor is your hard drive storage space on historical data. It allows you to go back and look at alarm history. Basically, you can go through the alarms and view the current alarms, acknowledge them. We have a historical database. Since we put the system online, you can go back and look at every alarm that ever happened in your SCADA system, as long as your data storage stays complete. It also allows you to monitor every action that anybody takes on the SCADA system. So if an operator logs in and he turns a pump on or turns a pump off, it's monitored and recorded. So, I tell people all the time, it's not really for a disciplinary type situation, it's more for educational purposes. So a manager can go back and look at what an operator's done and say, well, instead of turning this off to respond to that situation, you could have done this or this, and to help better the system. And that's what SCADA is all about, is gathering that information to help improve your system overall. There's a lot of things in the system that are not necessarily up and running because you have devices out there that just aren't working. We have flow meters out at the wastewater plant, as Jessica brought up. A lot of equipment out there is just non-functional. So although we're set up to gather the data from that and control that instrument or pump or motor, we can't control it if the motor's not there or is broken or if the instrument's broken. So it's critical that all these systems be maintained, and it's not up to me to tell you how to do it, but we do provide you the data to see how long the pump's been running so that you can do predictive maintenance, scheduled downtime type of stuff, so you don't get into an emergency situation where you've had a pump running 10 years that should have been replaced in 5 years, or that type of situation. So the SCADA system really allows you to collect all that data and make some intelligent decisions on how to move forward in the future and help maintain your system. So, is there any questions about the SCADA system, how it works, or what it does?
Lighting seems to be one of our biggest issues out here.
Yes, and unfortunately, even though I consider myself close to God, I don't have to zero on that. I was telling Jessica earlier today that I worked on a plant where it's just a simple tank battery. We spent over $250,000 on lightning protection, one of the state-of-the-art systems out there. Lightning missed the tanks, hit the control building, caught it on fire, spread the tanks and demolished the whole plant. It's just an act of God. You can take some preventative measures against lightning. For instance, at the Muske's tanks, we had a couple of transmitters go out. A couple $100, I'm not sure what the cost is. I very rarely deal in that end of the business, so I really don't care to. But it's a whole lot cheaper than buying lightning protection systems. And you can buy surge protectors, but most surge protectors, ones that have been hit by lightning once, they're no good anymore, and you don't know it. You can buy more sophisticated lightning surge protectors that actually have alarms that tell you that they're bad. But it all boils down to you just can't control manufacturing. You can do due diligence too, but you have to weigh those costs yourself as to what's more beneficial, stock some spare parts and be ready to respond to natural occurrences, or spend a lot of money trying to deter the natural occurrences.
The equipment we have out there right now, is it up to date to interface with the SCADA system?
The equipment that is working is up to date to interface with it. This particular SCADA system will talk to just about any type of equipment. It's We like using Ethernet, we can talk Modbus, there's a lot of different communication languages out there that we can talk to. So there's most of the stuff out there is, I know a recent well, like well number 7, they went in and, obviously got hit by lightning, they changed the pump panel out. When they did, they changed it out to a pump panel that was a 480 volt panel where we had 120 volt controls in it before. Most of the stuff we do is lower voltage control using relays to interface with a higher voltage, but that particular pump panel, when it was replaced and under the SCADA system was hooked back in, so it couldn't be ran on auto. And that's how I was down here yesterday and replaced that and redid the controls and it got it back up to where they can run it automatically. The SCADA system itself will sit there and monitor your tank levels and maintain those tank levels in an automatic situation as long as you have the resources to come on and off to do so. When you have a couple of pumps fail or pipeline break, something like that, the SCADA system can't go out there and fix it for you, but it can let you know it needs to be fixed. But you do have a lot of outdated equipment that should be tied in, especially at the wastewater plant, but there's no equipment there too tight. Flow meters, that type of stuff, it just not working. So the SCADA system doesn't fix that, but as soon as it's fixed, they'll be tied in and you'll be able to monitor that type of stuff. Mr. Stevens, I believe you have a question.
Jessica, how many wells do we have on our water system? And how many of those are up and running?
I think we had 14. There are, 2 we just decommissioned, up and running. I think right now there's just the Mooskies 10 is the only one that is still being worked on as far as the wells. I know that Skinner was out there yesterday and today. And in talking to Johnny earlier, that should be wrapped up this week, as in tomorrow because of the holiday. The panel at the treatment plant was also supposed to be in today, and that had to be refabricated, and it took about 3 weeks to refabricate it because there's no replacement for it.
I'm trying to work water right now, wastewater on my car. So it was reported that Alpine Heights was without water on June 25th, that morning, no water at Alpine Heights. They called in and were told that the tanks were drained. Why is that?
Well, I don't know who told them that.
It was Diana who specifically said the tanks were empty and she would find out why they had been drained. That was at 9:15 in the morning, the email that I